Okay, now you see the defense saying it has nothing to do with it, but does it? It's part of their relationship, which is what this case is all about. Let's bring back in our guest. Still with us. Los Angeles, California tonight, forensic psychiatrist, trial expert witness, and columnist of Inside the Criminal Mind, Dr. Carole Lieberman. So let's focus on the nature of this relationship. And we know how it ended. She stabbed him to death. She's claiming self-defense, but there was obviously violence in the relationship. But then there were these moments where they're sort of business partners, creating pornographic videos and posting them. What does that tell us about the nature of their personalities, their relationship? And is there any connection between these extreme videos that they were making and making a lot of money from and the level of tumultuous violence in the relationship? Is there any sort of relationship between those two aspects of what was going on between Courtney and Christian? And I'll start with you, Dr. Carole Lieberman.
Well, you know, when there is a couple where there's a lot of domestic violence, there's also usually a lot of jealousy. And the domestic violence often comes about when one of the people think that the other one has been cheating and so on. Now, imagine, here they are putting on these pornographic things on for OnlyFans, and they're basically flirting with the camera. You know, they're flirting with the people who are paying the money. And so that in itself is a recipe for disaster, a recipe for, you know, one thinking that the other is just is more interested in other people than in them. So that, no matter what else was going on, that was certainly a big part of their jealousy.
Dr. Lieberman, what are your thoughts about the money, right? These two are I mean, they're living a really nice life down in Miami. You know, I think their rent was somewhere probably between $10,000 to $12,000 a month. I'm sure they're going out to some really nice restaurants and enjoying life. What impact does money have on people who are relatively young? I mean, compared to me, obviously they're very young. But, you know, you're young, you're good looking, you're getting famous, and you're getting money. How does that all play into the equation here?
Well, it's very heady, and, you know, it makes you feel very special. And you know, in a way, they needed each other, depending upon what the videos were. I mean, they could have each found another partner, theoretically, but while the money is good, you know, while they have all these fans, why ruin a good thing? So there's this pressure to stay together. But, you know, she made a comment on a podcast. She said something, I only date black guys. And then she clarified, she said, I only date rich black guys. So money was important to her. And interesting, I mean, because it's interesting because, you know, she was making money too on OnlyFans. It's not like she needed a partner to support her necessarily. But so she had this interesting predilection for rich black men.
Absolutely. And it's incredibly tragic. I mean, yeah, you want to make money that way, fine. You know, people do what they do, but it's the violence and then the way it all ended. All right, we've got a lot more to get to on this. There you have the prosecutor describing that 911 call, and at the end of, you know, there was a response, but Christian Obancelli died afterwards, but he was alive during the 911 call, and prosecutor describing that to us. Let's bring back in Dr. Jenny Lacey, Dr. Carole Lieberman. Ultimately, this case is about what happened that day, but how much of that, how important do you think it will be to understand what happened leading up to that day? The nature of what happened over 2 years in this relationship. Dr. Lieberman.
Well, we know that they had a very volatile relationship. There was a lot of domestic violence in those 2 years. The neighbors were complaining and so on. And, you know, in that elevator scene, of course, she's the aggressor. And there have been more witnesses who have said that they have seen her being the aggressor. There was one that said they saw him on at least one occasion. You know, that was on that day. he went out for sandwiches, presumably. He went out at around 1:45, and he came back almost 3 hours later. And, I was talking about jealousy before. I think that could well be the precipitating issue at that time, that she was wondering, it doesn't take that long to go out and get sandwiches. What were you really doing? And then, of course, the police came, and when they saw her covered in blood, and they ultimately took her for a psychiatric evaluation. I don't know. The one time they had come recently, just before that, they found her intoxicated. So perhaps it was, something like that. Or perhaps she was so distraught and not making sense, or she was acting like she was distraught. But, there are these, there's some video of her on the balcony, and she's looking very seductive towards the police. And at first they thought that they believed her, and thought that it really was that self-defense. And then, of course, they thought about it more. 4 months later, they, went to arrest her. But I think it's going to, of course, that psychiatric evaluation is going to be very important.
Absolutely. And again, we'll continue to track this story. Big thank you tonight to Dr. Carole Lieberman. Appreciate your insight and your time on this Friday night. We'll see you again really, really soon.